Hi everyone, welcome to Talk Easy. Today, Catherine and Mike will explore job-related idioms like burning the midnight oil, climbing the corporate ladder, and take it to the next level. Learn how to use them in professional conversations. Let's dive in.
Welcome to another deep dive. You know those sayings we always hear around the workplace? Idioms. Like burning the midnight oil, climbing the corporate ladder.
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah. We use them all the time, but ever stop to think where they came from? Or what they really mean?
Well, they really give us a glimpse into how we think and talk about work. But there's usually a lot more to them than meets the eye.
Exactly. So in this deep dive, we're going beyond the simple definitions. We're going to dig into the history behind these idioms, see what they can tell us about workplace culture.
I think you're going to find it really interesting. Let's start with burning the midnight oil. You're probably familiar with that one. Typically, it means working late into the night.
Been there. All-nighter to finish a project, prepping for a big presentation. Yeah, those late nights feel like you're burning something all right. But it's funny to think about that phrase literally.
Well, that's actually where it comes from. Back in the 17th century, oil lamps were the main source of light, right? So working late meant you were literally burning oil to keep your workspace lit.
So the phrase changed along with technology. Don't really use oil lamps anymore, but the saying stuck around.
Exactly, and it shows a certain work ethic, willingness to go the extra mile, even if it means sacrificing some sleep.
Yeah.
But it also brings up some interesting questions about work culture today.
Like what kinds of questions? Now I'm curious.
Well, dedication is great, but this saying kind of hints at overwork too, right? Burnout. It almost makes long hours seem normal, which isn't always healthy or sustainable. So next time you hear burning the midnight oil, think about the context. Is it celebrating hard work? Or is it more about unrealistic expectations?
Yeah, good point. Easy to focus on the hard work part and not the potential downsides.
Right. Idioms can be tricky like that. They sound simple, but often carry a lot of cultural baggage. Now let's switch gears. Let's talk about climbing the corporate ladder. All about ambition, moving up in a company.
Yeah, it makes you think about working your way up, from the bottom rung to the top. Promotions along the way. But I wonder, is that structured climb still how it works these days?
It's a good question. The whole ladder idea really took off with corporate culture in the 20th century. Big organizations, hierarchies, clear career paths, that kind of thing. But the way we work is changing.
It is. Remote work, freelance gigs, people starting their own thing. Doesn't always fit the traditional ladder, right? So what does that mean for someone who wants to climb today? Is that even the right way to think about a career anymore?
Maybe not for everyone. That phrase kind of assumes moving up is the only way to succeed. But some people want to move sideways, learn different skills, or start something on their own. Maybe that's their success.
So even though we still say it, the reality of climbing the corporate ladder is a lot more complicated now.
Absolutely. It reminds us to look beyond the surface of these sayings and think about the bigger picture. Okay, for our last idiom in this section, let's talk about taking it to the next level.
Now that one feels a lot more modern. It's all about improving, innovating, pushing boundaries, kind of like that exciting moment in a video game when you level up.
You got it. Taking it to the next level likely came from sports and gaming. It reflects that modern idea of always getting better.
And it's everywhere, right? Business, technology, even just personal growth,
Yeah.
improving a project, a skill, a hobby. It's all about taking it to that next level. But I wonder if there's a downside to this pressure to always improve.
There could be. Striving for excellence is great, but this phrase can contribute to unrealistic expectations. Maybe even a fear of failing or burnout.
So just like burning the midnight oil, we need to think about the context. That seemingly positive phrase can also have some negative consequences.
Exactly. Language is powerful, Even these simple idioms can shape how we see success, failure, even the nature of work itself.
Wow, I never thought about it like that. We've just touched on these three idioms and I'm already seeing them differently.
They really do reveal a lot, don't they? What's really interesting is how each one kind of represents a different part of working today.
Okay, you've got me curious now. Break it down for me. How do they each reflect the work experience?
All right, well, think about burning the midnight oil for a second. It speaks to those demands, those pressures, deadlines, having to deliver, and sometimes even the sacrifices we make. It's almost like a badge of honor some places. But as we said, it can also point to problems too.
Right, burnout, that always-on feeling. What about climbing the corporate ladder? Where does that fit in?
That one really gets to the heart of ambition, I think, that desire to move up, especially in those traditional company structures. It's about strategically working the system. Get to that next rung, that next promotion, the corner office, right?
Paints a pretty specific picture, doesn't it? That straight line upwards, focused on titles and positions.
It does. And then we have taking it to the next level, which is all about that constant push to do better, innovate, never settling, but always trying for something bigger, better, more impactful.
It definitely feels more dynamic, more action-oriented than the others. I can see how it fits in today's world, everything moving so fast.
Exactly. It shows a certain mindset, wanting progress, believing in potential. And what I find interesting is how all three of these idioms, even though they have different origins, different meanings, they all create this big picture of the modern workplace.
Like pieces of a puzzle, each one giving a glimpse into a different part of work life.
Exactly. When you hear these idioms, it's not just about the words themselves, it's also the culture behind them, the values they reflect.
Almost like a secret language, decoding how we talk at work. Be cool to see how they actually play out, in real situations. Think we could try that.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Let's imagine, okay, a manager goes up to someone and says, "We've got a tight deadline on this project. Think you can handle it?" And the employee says, "Absolutely. Might have to burn the midnight oil, but I'll get it done."
So in that case, it's not just about working late. It's the employee reassuring their manager, showing they're committed.
Right. It's a subtle way of saying, I'm going to go above and beyond to make this happen. Okay, now let's think about climbing the corporate ladder. Let's say you overhear two colleagues talking. One says, "I heard there's a big promotion coming up." And the other one says, "Well, I've been putting in the work, hoping to climb that ladder and snag that position."
Ah, so there you get a sense of their ambition, how they see their career going, focused on moving up in the company.
Exactly. And it suggests they value that recognition, those rewards that come with moving up. All right, last scenario. You're in a brainstorming meeting and someone says, "We've had some success with this strategy, but I think we can do even better." And someone else jumps in and says, "Let's take it to the next level then. What if we try this new approach?"
Okay, so taking it to the next level here is all about pushing those boundaries, coming up with innovative solutions as a team.
It's a call to action, right?
Yeah.
A team effort to do better and achieve something truly remarkable. And what's really cool is that these real-life examples show us that these idioms aren't just ideas. They're tools we use every day to talk about our goals, what we want to do, even our worries about work.
That's true. We use them so casually, but they say a lot about how we think, how we see ourselves at work. But here's something I've been wondering. These idioms are common, sure, but they also kind of reflect a certain way of thinking about work, don't they?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. They're based on cultural norms and expectations that might not apply to everyone or in every situation. For instance, take climbing the corporate ladder. It assumes that upward path is what everyone wants. But what about those who'd rather move horizontally, getting experience in different departments, or people who prioritize work-life balance over climbing any ladder?
And burning the midnight oil, while it might show dedication, also kind of makes those unhealthy work habits seem normal. What message does that send? Especially to people just starting their careers.
That's a very important point. We have to be mindful of the downsides, even with these positive-sounding idioms. They might be promoting a culture of overwork or unrealistic expectations. And even with taking it to the next level, while it encourages ambition and innovation, it could also add pressure to constantly be better, which isn't always healthy or realistic.
It's like a double-edged sword, right? These idioms are useful, yeah, but we also need to think critically about what they imply. Do they match our own values and goals?
Exactly. It's about understanding the nuances, the potential problems, and not just taking these phrases at face value. Because in the end, language shapes how we see things. It can affect how we approach our careers, for good or for bad.
That's a really insightful takeaway. It's making me reconsider how I use these phrases myself. Now, thinking about how much the workplace is changing, I'm curious about what'll happen to these idioms. Will they evolve? Will new ones appear?
That's a fascinating question. Work is always changing, right? So it makes sense that the way we talk about it will change too. Think about the rise of remote work and the gig economy. Those are already changing how we view traditional career paths.
So maybe climbing the corporate ladder will become less relevant for some people, and new idioms will pop up to describe freelancers, digital nomads, entrepreneurs.
Exactly. And the focus on well-being, work-life balance, that might lead to a shift away from sayings like burning the midnight oil, or at least a more critical look at what dedication really means.
I can already imagine new phrases coming up, something like finding your flow state or building your dream portfolio, to reflect that more personalized, flexible way of working.
Definitely something to keep an eye on. The way language changes is a reflection of how society changes. And the future of work idioms will definitely give us a glimpse into how our relationship with work keeps changing.
Like a linguistic time capsule just waiting to be opened.
Okay, so we've really dug into these three idioms, unpack them. But before we wrap up, I want to go back to something you said earlier, the idea that these idioms show us bigger cultural values. Can you talk more about that?
Of course, it's important to remember that language is never neutral. And these idioms, while they seem universal, can have different meanings in different cultures.
I see what you mean. For example, climbing the corporate ladder really focuses on the individual, right?
Okay.
It's all about personal success, moving up.
Exactly. That reflects a very Western capitalist way of thinking about success. In other cultures, it might be more about what the group achieves, working towards a common goal, or finding harmony within a hierarchy rather than trying to reach the top.
And even burning the midnight oil, which might be seen as dedication in some cultures, could be viewed differently in cultures that value family time or a more balanced way of working and living. Precisely. So when you come across these idioms, think about your own cultural biases and how they might be affecting how you understand them. It also shows how important it is to be sensitive to other cultures when we communicate, especially with people from different backgrounds.
So insightful. It reminds us that good communication isn't just about knowing the words. It's about understanding what those words mean in different cultures, the unspoken messages.
Absolutely. And sometimes those unspoken messages can tell us more than the words themselves.
This is mind-blowing. We've been talking about these idioms for a while, and I feel like I'm just scratching the surface.
It's a journey, isn't it? The beauty of language is there's always something new to find, more layers to peel back.
Speaking of uncovering layers, you mentioned a fascinating historical fact about burning the midnight oil. I'd love to hear it.
Yeah.
Yeah, lay it on me. Always up for a little history, especially when it's about something we use every day, like an idiom.
Well, get this. Burning the midnight oil wasn't just about any oil. It specifically meant whale oil. That was the fuel for lamps back in the 17th and 18th centuries.
Whale oil. Wow, okay, that's even more interesting. So it's not just a general image, it's tied to that specific type of oil back then.
Exactly. Really shows you how even these simple phrases have these surprisingly specific origins. Imagine it, someone working late at night, the only light coming from that flickering whale oil lamp.
Yeah, I can picture it. Almost feel that pressure to get the work done. Everyone else asleep.
Really sets the scene. And it shows how language connects us to the past, those little bits of history hidden in everyday sayings.
That's like a secret code, right? Unlocking
Yeah.
these hidden meanings and connections. Okay, so we've looked at the meanings, the origins, the cultural side of burning the midnight oil, climbing the corporate ladder, and taking it to the next level. You've really given me, and I hope our listeners too, a lot to think about.
And these three are just the beginning. Think of them like a starting point to explore language and the working world. So many more fascinating idioms out there, each one with its own story and insights.
So if there's one thing you want our listeners to take away from this deep dive, what would it be? What should they keep in mind when they hear these idioms or others like them?
I'd say pay attention to the language you hear, the language you use, especially at work. Don't just accept those phrases on the surface. Think a little deeper. What are their origins, their hidden meanings? What do they tell us about the culture? You might be surprised what you find.
It's like becoming a language detective, finding clues in everyday talk. So next time you hear thinking outside the box or hitting the ground running, take a second. Think about what they really mean.
Exactly. Ask yourself, where do these sayings come from? What ideas about work and success are hidden in them? How do they shape how we think and talk to each other at work?
By asking those questions, we can become better communicators, more aware of the power of language and how culture shapes our view of work.
And who knows? You might even find yourself using these idioms in new ways, making your own conversations more interesting and engaging.
Like adding a secret weapon to your communication skills. Well, we've come to the end of our deep dive into workplace idioms. You've really opened our eyes, and hopefully our listeners too, to the hidden meanings and complexities of these phrases.
It's been my pleasure to explore these little linguistic gems with you. And remember, language is always changing, always adapting. So keep that curiosity going, keep exploring. Who knows what amazing discoveries you might make.
Until next time, happy exploring!